This video is sponsored by Shortboxed, the easiest and safest way to buy and sell graded comic books. Download the app today using the link in the description. Back on February 15th of this year, I released a video in which I spoke about the impact that inflation could have on the values of comics. And at the time, inflation was sitting at about 7%. Fast forward a couple of weeks, inflation has actually increased to 7.9% as of today. And this is a 40-year high. Now, what's really interesting is that this 40-year high, this 7.9% rate, was prior to the massive increase in gas and oil prices that have been seen over the last couple of days. And again, I will tell you that I believe that inflation is having an impact on the value of comics and will potentially continue to do so moving forward. Now, this is not me saying that the comic market is going to crash. That is not what I am saying. Now, this is not me saying that the comic market is going to crash. That is not what I am saying. I am, however, suggesting that now could be a fantastic time for people to actually buy comics. Everything in life, by and large, is cyclical. What is high will become low, and what is low will eventually become high. And as we look at the values of comics kind of ticking down, if you time it right, you may be able to snap up some really awesome comics at reduced prices. And I personally have been keeping my powder dry for the last couple of months. I have not been buying any major keys because I believe that we are going to continue to see prices kind of slide down. And in a moment, we are going to actually take a look at a couple of examples because I had some people that reached out to me that said that they didn't necessarily believe what I was saying because it didn't show any examples. So we're going to try to take a look at a few examples to illustrate this point. And I'll actually be using Go Collect to do this because Go Collect has a really awesome set of functionality that allow you to see where a comic was a year ago, where it is at 90 days, and where it is also at 30 days. And so you're able to see, a really nice trend. And so we're going to do a little bit of spot checking, looking at some hot comics, primarily Marvel comics. But what I would say to you is down in the comment section, if there are books that you're curious about, if you don't have access to data or Go Collect, let me know what books you might want me to look up, and maybe we'll actually take some time to do it during an upcoming live stream. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and look at some examples. So I have things set up to walk through a few examples. And the very first one that we're going to look at is Giant Size X-Men. And I want to orient you to what we're going to be looking at here on the Go Collect website. Some wonderful data that they have where you can see here that there have been roughly 4,100 sales of this comic. And I don't know of what period that captures, but 4,100 sales is a healthy number. Going from the right side, what you can see is this is the value at the 1 year mark. This was the 90-day mark, and here is the 30-day average. Moving further to the left, you can see the FMV, the number of sales, and then also the census count. What's great about the Go Collect database is that it ties directly into the CGC database. And so this number is, I think, pretty real time, if you will. So we can see a year ago that Giant Size X-Men was selling for $44,000. 90 days ago, it was roughly $35,000. And the 30-day average has seen that book drop to $21,000, and that's roughly a 50% decline. As you go through some of this other data, what you're going to notice is that there are definitely some declines. There is some stabilization. And in some cases, as you go from the 1 year to the 30, you can see that there actually are some increases. And I think that there are a few reasons maybe why we're seeing that. Here you can see at a 9.4, this book was selling for $12,000 a year ago. It is now $11,000. Jumping down to the 9.0, you can see it was $8,600. It is now $8,100. A year ago, here is an actual increase. You can see the book was going for $6,200 at an 8.0. That is actually increased to $7,700. The 7.5 was roughly $5,000 and is roughly still the same, around $5,000. You can see a slight increase here for a 7.0 from $4,700 to $4,800. You can see that the book has gone down around $600 for a 6.5, from around $4,600 to around $4,000. You can see the FMV is actually much lower at $3,300, and that's against 265 sales for that specific book. And as you work your way down the list, you can see some additional declines: $4,100 to $4,000, $36 to $36. A little bit of a decline here for the 4.5, from roughly $3,200 to $3,100. So some interesting things that are happening there with Giant Size X-Men issue number 1, which again is a wonderful book. Let's take a look at Fantastic Four number 48. Again, if there were an index of comics, potentially Fantastic Four issue number 48 would be on there. There are roughly 3,200 sales of this comic that are captured in the sales data that we're going to be looking at. You can see here that at a 9.4, this book was selling for $31,000 back a year ago. It is still roughly the same, with around 42 individual sales. But what's interesting is that the FMV is a little lower, and there could be several reasons for that. It could be a data lag. There could be some other things that are happening there with the FMV. So I don't know that I would play too much into that. But scrolling down, there's a lot of missing data, so we're going to skip over some of that. We're going to go here to the 7.5. A year ago, this book was selling for $6,200 and has dropped to $5,700. You can see at a 7.0, $5,600 down to $5,400. Roughly a $500 decrease here for a 6.5, from $4,500 to $4,000. A substantive decline here from $4,100 to $33 at a 6.0. So again, some really interesting things happening here. You have a slight increase for the 4.5 and a 4.0. $2,400 now going for $2,500. $2,300 now going for $2,600. And again, part of that could actually be the reality that some people are able to get in, and they're jumping in, and they're probably extremely happy with their purchases. So some interesting things happening with this data. We're going to do one more deep dive into Hulk issue number 181. Again, if there were index of comics, potentially Hulk 181 would be on that list. There have been roughly 5,600 sales, and there are a total of 74 currently available for sale based upon the data feed that Go Collect gets here. You can see some interesting stuff happening with the 9.8. I'm not quite sure what to make of that. This book was selling a year ago for $42,000, and there was a sale of $120. Definitely something not quite right with that. That could be maybe a facsimile comic that has been pulled in that needs to be scrubbed out of the data. So definitely something interesting going on there. 9.6 was selling roughly a year ago for $3,100. It maintains at $3,100. You see some interesting things happening here at an 8.5. This book was roughly $10,000 and is now $8,600. Here you see $8,000. Roughly the same, $8,000 at an 8.0. A slight increase here at a 7.5. This book was selling for $7,300 and is now $7,500. You see a nice decline here for the 7.0 from $6,400 or $6,500 to $5,700 at 90 days, and maintaining roughly that same price over the last 30 days. Another decrease here for the 6.5. As we scroll down, you can see another decline here for the 5.0, but an increase at a 4.5 from $4,200 to $4,500. So I want to look at three other books here relatively quickly. And these are, some books that have been pretty popular over the last little bit. The first one we're going to look at is Spider-Man issue number 316. This book, for some reason or another, was just crazy hot at various points going back to 2021. The 9.8 was selling for a crazy amount of money. And when we look at that, you can see that that book was selling at a 9.8 for $1,200. 90 days, it dropped to $1,000 and is now sitting at $965 for a 9.8 with an FMV of $900. Some interesting things here happening when you go to the lower grades. 9.6 roughly $477. It is now $373. $360 for a 9.4. I'm sorry, yeah, drops to $261 here at a 9.4. And again, you can see similar types of declines as you work your way down the list. There is an increase here for a 7.5. I was selling a year ago for $140, dropped to $130, and is now back up to $150. Again, not quite sure what to make of that, but you can see that there is, for the most part, a downward trend. The next book that I want to look at is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 300, the first appearance of Venom, unless you believe Todd McFarlane. When you look at this book, there have been a lot of sales. There have been 10,000 sales associated with this book, and there are roughly 28,000 copies of this book on the census. And as you look at the data here, this book at a 9.8 was selling for $6,200 a year ago, now sits at $53. 9.6 was selling for $2,000, relatively stable at about $2,000. The 9.4 has seen a slight decline from $1,200 to $1,100. Same thing can be said for the 9.2. Definitely some declines that are happening here as you work your way down the list. And there is a slight increase again here at a 7.0 from $604 a year ago to $637, but it goes right back to a decline and then up to an increase here at a 5.5. You can see the book was selling for below $500 relatively consistently, and then is now selling for $500 at a 5.5. So the very last book that I want to look at is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 361, which is the first appearance of Carnage. This is a book that has appeared on my top 10 most submitted book into CGC video for most of 2021. And there's a reason for that. This book has 24,000 copies on the CGC census across all grades. There have been roughly 10,000 sales over whatever period of time. And as we wait for the data to load here, we'll see what it reveals. 9.8, this book was selling for $906 a year ago. It has dropped dramatically, $650 90-day to $580 at the 30-day. The 9.6 goes from $368 down to $259. Again, you can see the similar type of declines. And again, I am not saying that this is a crash. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But again, I am saying that potentially this represents a great buying opportunity. So as mentioned, I have not been buying any major keys because I think that there is still some room for the value of these comics to drop. But I firmly believe in the long-term potential of comics. And so I'm waiting for them to reach a point where I feel like it's a perfect time to jump in. And not that I can time it, but in my mind, I feel like there is still room for a decline. And so I want to maximize my opportunity. So I'm going to be waiting. I'm going to be watching. And when the numbers get where I think that they should be, I'm definitely going to pounce. I will also say that the books that I looked at today are not necessarily the ones that I am looking at. So I want to be super transparent about that. I simply use these books for the purpose of illustrating what I was speaking about potentially the direct impact of inflation on the values of comics. Because as people have to pay more for the everyday things, there is less money around for Hulk 181. With that, we're going to wrap this video up. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this video, I definitely want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel for whatever reason, I want to invite you to go ahead and take care of that now. And as always, if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.